Alrighty. Do we want to start with a prayer and then a spiritual thought?
Okay. I can offer a prayer.
Okay.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank Thee so much for the opportunity we have to meet as a group and for the technology that gives us this opportunity. We thank Thee for the blessing of having the BYU Idaho online education program so we can learn more and prepare ourselves to serve Thee better and Thy children. We ask Thee to bless us during this meeting and that we can learn from these case studies and we can progress towards our degree. We love Thee and we say these things in the name of Thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Does anybody have a spiritual thought or?
I've got something I can share.
Okay.
So this morning for my personal studies, I was reading the general conference talk by Elder Bednar from this past conference, Meek and Lowly of Heart. And one of the quote, let's see. One of his quotes is, "A distinguishing characteristic of meekness is a particular spiritual receptivity to learn both from the Holy Ghost and from people who may seem less capable, experienced, or educated, who may not hold important positions, or otherwise may not appear to have much to contribute." Now, I'm going to start by saying I don't think that about either of you in any way, but I think as we're in school learning from each other in learning groups and everything that we interact with, we're going to come across people that many times they have better experience than us in something and then just understand a concept better than us. And there are going to be times where we may understand a concept better and have more experience in an area. But the principle is, no matter what situation we're in, there's always something that we can learn from the people that we're around. I'm not going to get the quote exactly, but there was a great writer who said, somebody is always my superior in something, and in that fact, I can always learn from them. And so I think as we participate in these discussions, we should just always remember, hey, there's always going to be something that I can learn from these people that I'm with.
Excellent. Thank you.
True.
Yes.
I've actually had that experience where I got together in a group and I was like, oh my goodness, what can I learn from these people? And I was really surprised with how much I did learn and how much I didn't know and how much other people had more experience than I did. It was a really great, humbling learning experience. So.
Yes, that's the point.
Okay, I'm going to open up the stuff that we're supposed to be going over so I make sure that we're getting everything
Perfect
that we're supposed to cover.
By the way, I've got a second screen, so if you guys see me just looking off to the right randomly, I'm not ignoring you guys. I'm looking at the second screen. So
no problem.
Okay, I don't know if you guys need this or want this, but I can share my screen and show what the information is. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Says many of our discussions center on understanding success or making crucial decisions. Today we are trying to account for failure. Quickly reconstruct the key elements of the cake financial business model. So what did you guys think of Cake's business model?
I think he had an interesting customer value proposition of trying to provide a better service for people being able to invest who don't know a ton about investing. They want to be involved, but they're nervous because they feel like they don't have all of the information. At the same time, they don't trust the established professionals in the field.
Yeah.
And so they're looking for other ways to kind of validate, hey, this is what I think I should do. A lot of times they trust their friends and family and peers. And so he wanted to build a platform that would give them that opportunity to learn from each other and validate each other. But so I think that was the customer value proposition he was going for. But as we find out later, it wasn't. There were some errors in the value proposition that didn't make people want it as much as he thought they would.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think with, he had a good idea. And I think he focused more on that social aspect of it, which he found out didn't work. But the value was in people wanted someplace where they could kind of get everything, like they could get that information, they could see what other people were doing, and kind of, cater their investing approach there, which was a great idea. But I think, like I said, the social aspect of it wasn't what he thought it was.
Yes, his idea is great. The way he planned it to help people get the information of where investors were putting their money, but like you said, Tiffany, that what happened is that the social part, like networking, did not go the way he thought it would be. So he couldn't have that algorithm. So people can get the real information or where to invest. And unfortunately, it didn't grow up the way he thought. But the idea, the customer value proposition he had, it was great, in my opinion. It was a great idea.
Yeah. So is this to go to the market plan, and technology and operating strategy and the cash flow formula? So the marketing plan, I thought he kind of did it weird. I think he should have beta tested. Instead of doing the tech.com thing.
Okay.
And I don't think there was necessarily a problem with him wanting to do the big launch where he was competing against the other companies.
Right.
It's that the fact that he didn't do any prior testing
Right.
before going into this competition. And so he hadn't taken the time to understand, hey, what are the big bugs I'm going to run into when I do this?
Right. And I think, he said that he couldn't have known some of the issues that would have come up, but I think he kind of could have. When we look at like the Rent a Runway thing, when they did their launch and they started small with their beta testing and kind of saw how things went, and then when they had to do that pivoting, it wasn't such a pain. And I think for Cake, it was really a pain because they didn't know those things. And when they had to pivot, it meant that they had to rehire a bunch of people. And it just, kind of put a kink in everything. And then with the market crashing, that didn't help either. There was so many things that went wrong.
Yeah.
it surprised me that he had to changed his team completely from Cake 1 to Cake 2. But maybe that was part of the process to improve the product.
Well, and I understand doing that, because when people aren't on board, if you can't get your people to see what you're doing or to make that change, it's best kind of to cut your losses and start fresh. But that was really painful, I think, for him, and really hurt the whole plan. And also the customers, I mean, he was trying to attract a certain kind of customer, and then when he realized that, you know, that's not what people really wanted, and they weren't really getting the people that they needed, or the customers, at least the client base that they needed, and they kind of had to switch things around, I think it hurt them, because their, you know, original customers were like, what's going on?
Yeah.
So the cash flow formula, did any of you guys understand that? I really struggled with that one.
Yeah, so I think here the basic thing is just having an idea of, and the reading about cash flow formula is pretty complex. I don't understand all of it, but I think the basic problem here is somewhere in the reading, he admits, yeah, we didn't actually know where we were going to get the money from. Like earlier in the case, he kind of predicts, hey, I think this percent's going to come from, there were three groups: advertising fees, subscription fees, and licensing fees.
Right.
But later on in the case, he admits, yeah, we weren't exactly sure how we were going to get all of that. And I think the idea of launching this service without actually already having an idea of, hey, I'm pretty sure this is how I'm going to monetize it once it's getting up off the ground, was a rather poor idea. I think something he could have done here to minimize the risk, after it already launched, he started meeting with a bunch of these larger companies to try and get them to license from him. And a lot of them were interested, but I think what he should have done was started those meetings and relationships long before the launch to find out for sure if they would be interested, and try and get somebody kind of nailed down on, hey, when we launch, if we can accomplish this, you'll come on board, and kind of secured that line of income before they even got started, and remove some of that risk.
True.
Yes. Also, he was talking about I don't know how to pronounce, Jodel or Jodly, the company who was going to be like 20 or 25 cents per month per account they were accessed. So it was going to be very, very expensive for them. And it was like maybe $1 per month in data costs. So that's why he said, no, I didn't agonize over this decision. They were a data and service company, and it was important competitive advantage to own their own data. So they won't be necessarily hiring this Jodel and spending so much money in the service for the information of the transaction.
Yeah, but he never got that information, which was kind of the crux of it. Okay, so we're supposed to vote on, was Cake doomed from the beginning, or was this a promising business model? I want to say, gosh, I'm so torn with this one. I would say that I think it was kind of doomed. I don't think he thought through a lot of the big problems and didn't really even face them once. Well, I mean, I guess he did face them, but I don't think he thought it through well, the business model. So I would probably say that it was doomed from the beginning.
I would argue that it wasn't doomed from the beginning. I think the point that he did doom himself was when he accepted that very large venture capital investment, and he immediately went into building the platform. I think that's the point when he doomed it. But had he done more research before getting to that step, I think he could have found a way to pivot his business model away from more of the social aspect, and into more of just helping people gather information. And I think he could have been very successful had he been able to make that pivot, but he locked himself out of that pivoting option when he started investing too much. And I think that's the point when he doomed himself.
So do you think that he could have done the social media part of it?
No, I think the social media part would have had to gone away. I think the original business model as it stood would not have worked, but I don't think that doomed him to failure. One of the things in our reading was that successful companies pivot multiple times.
Right.
And I don't think that means that their business model is a failure. I think it just means that it had to be adjusted. And I think it's the same for Steve Carpenter. Had he pivoted after doing some research and before doing the heavy investment, it could have been successful.
Okay. Jose, what do you think?
I think that it was doomed from the beginning. If we consider beginning the first part when he established his business model, but the idea was great, as I mentioned before, but the way he tried to implement the business model, like Richard said, and going maybe too fast to do things before taking more preparation and more research, unfortunately gave this outcome that couldn't work as he thought it would. So I think it was doomed from the beginning.
I think the original model was doomed as well, but I agree that you do have to do that pivoting, but I think he had a lot of things going against him. So so it says next, discuss Stephen's approach to the opportunity. Try to understand what, if any, Stephen could have done differently that may have produced a better outcome. I think we already kind of talked about that. And he talked about his retrospects of the things that he would have done differently.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see. I mean, they also even said in there that he was told many times that cake is where that the industry is kind of going towards that concept, but maybe it was a little bit too ahead of its time. But I think that idea didn't really work. What could he have done differently that could have produced a better outcome? Like I said, I think the way he launched everything with the competition, I think if he would have had, you know, a product and beta tested it and then kind of saw what was going on instead of having the launch through the competition and then going, wait, we're not getting the numbers that we thought we were going to get. If he would have done a beta test, he would have found all that stuff out beforehand, and probably could have adjusted before he had started spending all that money on the development of the product. So, and then it says there on page 10, there's no way that Stephen could have learned this upfront through interviews or focus groups. Yeah, like that's what I'm saying. I think he should have done beta testing. There was a lot of precedents pointing to a strong social component, including investment clubs and active communities on sites like Raging Bull.
Mm-hmm.
And then it says, as a group, come up with a list of ways Stephen's approach is different from Rent a Runway, Dropbox, and Mint. How do you know which assumption to test first? Was building the data layer first the right approach? What would you have done first?
So I think, at least if we're going to, in comparing it to Rent the Runway, I think the biggest difference between their approach and Steve's approach was they started with their key partners. They knew that the fashion people were going to be, if they couldn't get them on board, then nothing was going to work. And so they started there. Steve, if he had planned out his business model a little more, he would have realized that he needed to get some of these big firms on board to get some revenue from them and license out to them. And so he should have started by talking to them, as I said earlier, and removing that big factor of risk. And for comparing them to Dropbox, so Dropbox started by, they started coding almost right away, but their focus was on a small platform just to test the concepts, not trying to just build something that would be ready to go right away. Whereas Steve, he just jumped right into building the platform that was going to launch the product and serve the entire customer base. And I think there he spent too much time and money preparing something that he actually didn't test out and didn't know for sure if it was going to work.
Exactly. I don't know enough about Mint to think to compare it to him, but like I said, I agree that he could have done more testing and more tackling those big risks beforehand would have helped.
Mm-hmm. Like Richard said, in Rent the Runway, I think the first thing they started to do is the customers were talking about this service and all this social part of the business was ready and was strong for selling to them. In the case of in the case study, he started with the data layer first, and I think that he should have started with the social part, with the connecting the people, and then going to the data information, so he can offer to secure customers, to ensure customers, to sell the information to them and to license to them. But he started with the information layer first, and then he was trying and hoping that the customers will connect and share with friends and families, But maybe I thought that was something he could have done better.
Yeah. I think so. Tiffany, you brought up that you weren't sure as much about Mint. In the reading, it says that on page 11, he's kind of saying, it's ironic that Mint won the TechCrunch 40 competition and that they did basically everything the exact opposite of what they did. And one of the things that he points out is that they focused all of their energy on their site's front end and on their user interface and experience. So I think in terms of when an entrepreneur reaches this step of the preparing their business models and getting ready to, and they're needing to eliminate risks from what they're going to run into, Mint prioritized it and realized, okay, if the customers aren't going to use it, nothing else matters. So let's start there. And I think as you brought up, Jose, Steve didn't prioritize anything, and so he just jumped into what he thought was going to be the most difficult thing to design, which was the back end, instead of asking, well, hey, if I build the back end, will people use the front end?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true. I mean, I didn't know if I remember reading about how he talked about that at TechCrunch and how Mint had done it like completely opposite of them, but I wasn't sure what they were, what they're asking when they want us to compare. I guess that's what they're probably asking.
Yeah, I think it's just the approach, or how did they go into building their business model and testing it and finding out would it work?
Yeah,
and what assumptions they chased.
Well, and then, he had this idea that, if he had all this back end stuff and all the features and all that the clients would like it, but it was that first customer approach, that they were having problems with. And when they realized that, that's when they we need to work on that. So they did a little switch right there and tried to get that going better.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I don't think building the data layer first was probably the right approach. Yeah, they really needed to see if the customers were going to even like the idea of it at first, and then, move forward from there. And it says here, as a group, identify the main reason for Cake's failure. Was the failure just beyond Stephen's control? What low-cost experiment could Steve have done to test the assumptions behind the main reason for the failure? I think it was I think at that point it was beyond, at the point when the market crashed, I think it was beyond his control. Because everybody just got really conservative at that point. And he had big names on board, and he was, working the deals and stuff like that. And he had, done all those red-eye flights. But I think when the market crashed, it was really, that was kind of beyond his control. And I think that was part of the reason it didn't go where it needed to go at that point in time. And a low-cost experiment to test the assumptions beyond the main reason for the failure. I think that beta testing, once again, would have been a great idea.
Yeah, I think from our past discussion, we pretty well agreed that prior testing would have really helped out. And for the failure, I would argue that the point where it was beyond his control was when he started putting all of the money into building the back end after he accepted the venture capitalist firm, because as soon as he did that, he was on the clock for being able to create returns for the rest for all of his investors. And I think even if the stock market hadn't crashed, I don't think he would have had enough time to turn the business model around soon enough to create good enough revenues to keep it going. So I think as soon as he put himself on the clock by accepting those investments and building the back end, it was beyond his control.
See, I disagree, because I think that he, like I said, he had Schwab on board, and they were going to, accept and use the platform and all that stuff. So I think, and Schwab's one of the biggest companies out there. So if he would have gotten them on board, if that crash hadn't happened, I think he could have gotten them on board. And then I think the others would have followed suit. And that's kind of where he was going. And I think he could have made it work if that crash hadn't happened and Schwab hadn't have backed out.
Let's see, I'm trying to. I thought somewhere in the case it had, because I see where he had the 3 revenue streams. I thought it said somewhere what he thought the percentage he was going to get from. Oh, here it is.
Oh, it does.
Yeah, so I think he had only accounted for 36% of their revenues coming from licensing and fund fees. And I just don't think, with as much as he was pouring into the developing the back end, and with 43% of the revenue coming from premium services, he didn't even have customers to pay for a premium service. So I think he's still, even if he had gotten all of those people on board, that initial projection of 36%, I just don't think that would have been enough to carry them through until they started getting more customers and more revenue coming from the other locations.
But I still think if they had those big name companies behind them, they would have gotten that. The customers would have come. They would have gotten the more of the paying customers. And I still think they could have made it work. I think he was making it work, even with all the things that were going wrong. It was working, but because of that market crash and the Schwab backing out, he saw that it probably wasn't going to work how he thought it was going to work. So, and at that point in time, I don't think his heart was in it. And so he just decided, well, we'll just, cut and run and then sell it, and, or sell off the assets and go from there, move on. Because at that point he was, learning from his experience. So.
Yep.
What do you think, Jose?
Yes, I think it was a combination. It was part of his control, his failure, but also about the crisis the year before and the Schwab going back. So it was part of his control, and part of the situation was beyond his control or his failure.
Okay. All right. Do you guys want to move on to, is it Andreessen and Horowitz?
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Let's move on to that. It says, so far we've learned to evaluate business models of startups. Today, we will examine the business model decisions of a startup in a mature industry. As a group, begin by discussing the following questions. What was the VC's industry VC industry attractive? Was the VC industry attractive for the A16Z to enter in 2009? What was the competition like at the time? What was the typical fate of the new entrants into the industry? Why was this so? What were the trends in VC fund performance during that time? I think the VC industry was, I think it was attractive for A16Z to enter because they saw that they could change it, and because they had experience in, in being angel investors and with their own companies or their own startups, and they had things that they didn't like. And they saw that they could probably make some changes and do it better. The competition was really kind of fierce. Only the upper, certain, I can't remember the exact percentage, but it was like the top 5% in the VC capital were making money, or really, doing well. And the typical fate of the new ones were, that they just weren't doing well. And even if you didn't get those into that top percentage, you usually didn't make it. And I think that was just because of the way they structured it. With, like they had said, they had, a certain number of general partners, and then they had, assistant partners and junior partners, underneath them that were fewer than the actual. So I think the structure of it really made it so that it was, a difficult industry to be in, and that it wasn't really, friendly to the new entrants to the industry. And let's see, what were the trends in the VC fund performance during that time? I guess I kind of went over all that. They, like I said, they only the top few percentage would do well.
Yeah. So building on that a little bit, the percentages that you were referencing, it says 3% of VC firms generated 95% of the industry's returns. And the people in that 3% don't change. So I think a big reason, there's two big reasons for that. Further down, it says investors are showing a preference for the most successful brand names. I think just the name of the company became such a huge factor that if you weren't in one of those brands, you just weren't being considered. And if people aren't willing to if good ventures aren't willing to partner with a VC firm, then they have no chance, because all of the best people are going elsewhere. I think the other problem is they had a lot of disruption happening in the industry with, it says that there were lower startup costs, that so ventures could take longer before they had to turn to venture capitalists. They had a lot of competition coming from crowd funds, incubators, and super angels. So the normal market or pool that these people had to work with was getting smaller and smaller, and there were just too many funds chasing after the few good accounts that were looking for venture capital.
Yeah. Jose, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it was not very attractive because in 2008 they had a crisis. Many people were afraid of investing again and failing. but they were like Richard said, they were looking for startups with maybe some small challenges, but not really great challenges, so they can fund and they can help to grow. So I think it was not very attractive at the beginning, but they were looking for companies or startups with a lot of potential to grow.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so it says with all the entrenched incumbents and catch-22s, what silver lining did A16Z see? How did they plan to succeed in this difficult environment? Like I said, I think their business model kind of going after that, putting the right people together type thing. And actually, when they kind of switched and went, okay, we're going to start funding these later ventures, like they actually waited on investing in certain companies until they were kind of performing. And that kind of got fueled by their Skype sell and all that stuff. So I think the switch to that, getting that social aspect and putting the right people together, really helped them. Do you guys have any thoughts on that? What silver lining did they see with the catch-22 and the entrenched incumbents?
I think you nailed that pretty well. They realized that most people that were looking for venture capitalists investments also had an opinion of, hey, these venture capitalists don't actually have my best interest at heart. So they realized that if they could build something that showed, hey, we do have your best interest at heart, we're more interested in you, succeeding before we succeed, then they would get people just flocking to them because they didn't trust anyone else.
Right. And I think that support actually helped the businesses succeed, because, I mean, what kind of a business plan would go, oh, well, we're going to give you this money, but then we're going to leave you hanging and we're not going to, support you, because they succeed, the venture capitalists succeed if the companies succeed. So, why wouldn't you support them, and why wouldn't you give them the tools that they need to have a good company and to proceed through this process well? And that's, I think, what they did very well at A16Z, is they had that support structure there for these, these startups. And so, and they had the knowledge in that industry. And that's why, when they talked about doing the doubling, I was like, no, I don't think they should, because they have that industry knowledge. And I think that helps with that support for all the startups in that industry.
Yeah. And I think the next 2 points that we're supposed to talk about also cover a lot of what we've just shared. They were targeting first-time technical co-founders because, well, that's where their experience was and everything. And a lot of the specialists that they were pulling into their organization were also from those same fields. And so they could give them that coaching and help them be successful. How has the cost of a tech startup impacted the VC industry? I brought that one up earlier, of the costs are going down, and so people are taking longer before they actually invest.
Right.
And then the next one, what choices do technical founders have for financing that they didn't have a decade before? There's the incubators, the crowdfunding, more prevalent angel investors. And so the pool within venture capital is just getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah. Okay, VC firms compete on their ability to source, pick, and win. How does A16Z's business model influence these abilities compared to other firms? So I think, like you said before, Richard, that source, they attracted people because of their knowledge in the industry and because of the people that they knew, and the experience that they had in being either a CEO or, you know, a startup, and doing that themselves, being in the VC world. And so all those knowledges brought people to them because of, you know, what they had done before and where they had been. And I think it will only increase. I mean, it's asking, will it increase or decrease or have an effect on the number of potential deals they'll see compared to other competition? Well, yeah, I mean, I think the competition is going to see deals that are not in the industry that they're in, but I think they have that niche market.
Yeah.
And it says, how will this change if A16Z begins to fire CEOs because they're not performing well? Will this increase or decrease? I mean, part of their business model was to keep those founders as CEOs because of their experience with that, and because they, you know, seen that founders who are CEOs usually do well with their companies. I'm not sure that firing the CEOs, the founders, and hiring other ones would actually do well. I think that would really hurt them.
I also agree they will decrease because it's not wise to fire experienced people that you have had in high position. So I think they will. It says they have decreased the number of potential deals A16Z will have compared to their competition if they fire these people.
It says, how does the operating team help A16Z source, pick, and win? I think they are pretty key to that because they're kind of the, you know, they're their eyes, and they're the majority of them. They're going to see what can help, you know, A16Z get the deal, or actually, oh, this is a really good idea, you need to look at this, type of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think here, both in all three areas, sourcing, picking, and winning, there's a psychology principle between, and they mention it briefly in the case. There's communal relationships and transactional relationships. A transactional relationship is I do something for you so that in the future you will do something for me. Where a communal relationship is I'm going to do something for you and I don't expect you to give me anything in return. But what naturally happens is as a communal relationship builds, the other person turns around and says, hey, I'm going to do something for you, not because you did something for me and because I feel indebted to do it back, but because I feel like we have a good relationship and I care about you. And so A16Z built communal relationships with everybody that they could in every aspect of the market, both with their suppliers, the specialists that they had contact with every entrepreneur that they came in contact with all of the executives they came in contact with. They were constantly finding ways to help them do their job and hoping that in the future that would just turn around in referrals, both in getting people into their sourcing funnel, having those people be willing to pick their company. And then because they were constantly just doing things to help out those that they picked, that resulted in greater successes for these companies and therefore greater wins. And it came down to they were constantly trying to do things to help out other people without saying, hey, now you have to do something for me in return.
Right.
Okay.
I think
I wrote that to source, they would base on deals done by other peers. To pick, they would look for companies in a probable situation and possibilities to grow and succeed. And to win, they analyze value propositions and innovations or outstanding products or services they have to offer.
Yeah. Okay, so now it says that we're supposed to put ourselves in the shoes of Andreessen and Horowitz and decide whether or not to seek to double your assets under management. It says vote as a group. The decision must be unanimous and consider the following as you decide. How many portfolio companies can one general partner reasonably support? Are there any economies of scale in this business? Will you have to hire more operating team people? If so, will the partners actually make more money for doubling their assets, or will all of the additional profits go to hire more people? So, what's your vote? I already said what mine was, but I'll say it again. I don't think they should, just because I think their operation is working well as a group that they have, and if they throw more people into it, it might not work as well, and especially if they're doubling their assets and hiring more people, it's just going to be a bigger group, and it's going to be not as cohesive as they currently are. I mean, I get that a general partner can't reasonably support a certain number of companies, but maybe that's where they need to be, is a smaller thing, and I don't know. I think doubling their assets may be too much.
Okay.
What do you guys think?
In my case study, I wrote that maybe I would support the double its assets over the next 2 years, and they can diversify into other geographies first, and then they can go and start in other fields or other sectors. So I think it will be a good idea to double the asset. But I will also agree with the group.
So I vote as well that they shouldn't. And then, did you guys do the bonus calculations that they gave at the end of the preparation assignment?
No, I couldn't.
No, I didn't.
I'm going to
understand them.
So I am not 100% certain how. I think I got close to what they were looking for. I'm going to share my screen with you guys. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is me trying to follow what they were saying. The instructions up top were essentially just saying, okay, we've got how much they're investing per year, I've got a worst and best case scenario. If they get 2.5 to 3 times return, their yearly capital gains would be how much the company was sold for minus how much was invested. And so their total earnings would be how much was invested times the management fee plus the capital gains times the carry rate. And so this column is if they did the expansion of kind of 1.7 times what they are right now.
Right.
This column over here is assuming that they just stayed constant. So obviously their earnings are going to be greater if they expand than if they don't. But I tried to do some assumptions about, okay, what would the expansion of the teams look like? I did some research trying to figure out, okay, somebody who's not a general partner, how much are they going to be making? And I came up with about 125,000 a year, increased that a little bit for traveling expenses and all that stuff. Came up with some total costs for employees. Oh, something broke over there. And then take out the cost for all of the employees that you have, that get how much is remaining to be split between the general partners. And again, there's a lot of assumptions in here, but at the end, I came out that in the expansion, you actually end up making less per general partner than you would without expanding. And so I think the expansion, there's just too much that gets eaten up in the way of having to hire additional people for it. And I think they're already closer to their economies of scale right now. So while expanding, they might be able to get more of the market, but their overall profits, I think, would shrink.
Okay.
Wow, that's neat to see that. Because that's what I was, thinking would happen, but I didn't actually do the calculation. So
and the network won't be able to work as efficiently as it was before.
That's what I feel.
It's a great explanation, Richard.
So are we unanimous that they should not, or do we still need to convince you, Jose?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Didn't make the calculation either. Now I see why they shouldn't.
Okay, looks good. All right. So I think that's all let's see, let me make sure that we got all that done. Oh, no, we're supposed to do an assignment, aren't we? Did you guys look at the assignment, the group assignment?
Where is it? Oh.
At the end, I think. Richard, can I attach the link, the recording, or is that something you have to do since you did it? So after the quiz for group attendance, it says group assignment.
Yes, we need to send the link, and then we have the assignment.
Write a convincing response to the following questions. As a group, compose your response in a Word document and submit the write-up to your instructor. Okay. do we want to do like a Google Doc for this so that we can work on this together, or how do you guys want to do that?
Because I think we will all have to upload a document, huh? Or is only one per group?
I think it's only one, but I think we all need to work on it.
Of course.
I mean, I can start a document and email it to you guys if you want to do it that way. And then we can just email it back and forth if you want.
Okay.
How do you guys want to do that? Is that... Oh, where'd Richard go? We lost him.
I don't know. Let me see. Oh, he left, apparently. And he...
Okay.
Let's copy the link. Do you have the way to copy the link, Stephanie? Because I don't see the link now.
Yeah, I'll email that out. If
Okay.
not, I'll contact Richard and see if he can. If it's not in mine, it'll be in his.
Okay.
And we can get that link. And then we'll find out about that assignment. Maybe we'll just start something. I'll start something. I can send it to you, and then.
Okay.
Or
then we can all three upload the same after working each one. We can upload the document, because in my other course it says clearly only one student upload, but here I can find it. So maybe it's expected that we all upload the document, so we can receive your file, and then we can complete our part, email it back and forth until we complete it and we upload it.
okay. Sounds
Okay.
like a good. Okay. Sounds good. Oh, there he is. He's back. Yay.
I'm back. Yeah, they switched out the internet provider at my apartment complex recently, and it's been kind of glitchy. So right now I'm stealing the Wi-Fi from the other complex next door.
Oh, yay. We do that all the time. Jump on the neighbors.
What did I miss?
We have to do a group assignment.
Yep, I was actually just looking at that.
So how do you want to do that? We didn't know if we wanted to do a Google Doc, or if we would just want to start something and email it back and forth to each other.
Google Doc would probably be the best option.
Does anybody want to volunteer to do that? I can start that unless somebody else wants to.
I can, let's see, I can get one going real fast. Let's see. Actually, you know what I'm going to do is just create a folder for us in Google Drive, and then share it, so any of the future projects that we have to do, we'll just already all have.
Okay.
Okay, let's see.
That's my email at Gmail, Richard, just in case.
Okay, perfect.
You want mine too?
Yeah, that would be great.
I don't have a Gmail, but this works. So. I wonder if we should also include Tori and Daniel on it.
Yeah, it will be great. So they can also contribute. And
Yeah.
Let's see. This is called. Oh, no. Come on, technology.
Call from Joe.
Okay, so I've created and I shared a folder with both of you, and inside there should be a Google Doc called Steve Carpenter. Are you guys able to see that?
Yep. Got it.
I don't see it.
We make it hassle-free to sign up.
Let's see. Did you get an email for it at all, Tiffany?
I got it.
Okay.
Alrighty. I think that's all we need to do. Well, there's also a discussion board on the thing. So if you guys have any questions with the group project and you want to ask, feel free. I think only our group can see the stuff on that. So if we have any questions during the group assignment, just feel free to reach out and hopefully we'll get that done and turned in. Now, Richard, will I be able to access the link or the YouTube link for the recording, or is that something that you'll have to put on there? Is that going to be on? Did you send out that link, or was that my link?
I think we're still working off of your link. So I just clicked on kind of the control room button and it says I'm not the moderator.
Oh.
Okay. I will go ahead and
Sure.
attach the link and the list of the people who attended.
Perfect.
And go from there. Is there any other questions? Anything else? Oh, and I guess the instructors said that the lead person is supposed to change every week, and they did it alphabetically. That's why it was me. So I don't know who's next. But if you have any questions, feel free to let me know, and we'll proceed from there. Is this a good time for you guys to meet? Like, can we just stick it on the calendar for next week?
Yeah, it works perfect for me on Thursdays.
Yeah.
Okay.
9:30 works well for me.
Okay. So we're going to do 9 or 9:30.
I think 9:30 would be a little better for me.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll let everybody know that we'll do 9:30 next week, and then kind of pass the torch to the next person who's in line for our stuff next week. And if you have any questions with the assignment, reach out and let us know, and hopefully we can get it taken care of.
Okay.
All right. It was great being with you guys.
So for the assignment on the Google Doc, are we all just going to type our own individual through?
I lost Richard. I couldn't hear.
Yeah, he's breaking up a little bit.
Are we, for the assignment on the Google Doc, are we all just going to type up our own thoughts on it and then try and combine them? Or how are we going to tackle this assignment?
I think that's a good idea. We should just all put our own input, and then do you want me to kind of group everything together and have the final response? I can send it out or have everybody see it before it's submitted. What do you want to do? I mean, how do you want to approach it?
Anytime for this week, I think if we all the three of us put our individual thoughts, and then Tiffany, if you kind of synthesize it together and we all approve it before submitting it, I think that'll work well.
Okay, sounds good. Then let's do it that way.
Okay.
So
that way we can get the best of everything.
What time on Saturday would you want all the information uploaded, Tiffany?
If we can have it, let's say, can we do it by like 6 Mountain Time?
Okay. Okay, perfect. So we should tell the other 2 group members about it so they can know.
I'm going to send out the link so that they can watch the recording if they want to, and then also put in the assignment instructions and stuff too. So, and I'll send it to you guys so you'll have it as well. We're all kind of on board. So.
Okay, and I'll get an invitation sent off for them to be a part of the folder on Google Drive.
All right, sounds good. Anything else?
No, I think that's it.
Okay, great. It was great meeting with you guys. I will see you next week. Like I said, let me know if you have any questions, and we'll try to take care of it.
Okay.
All right, see you guys.